I know the two of you have been very busy in this off season, right, for NWSL, in and out of meetings, negotiations, everything. And, you know, Meghann, the last time that we had you on the show, the PA made a little bit of an announcement. There's an emergency fund that got launched recently, and it's the Players National Emergency Trust. Listeners can go to supporttheplayers.net to also continue their support of the players. This was a huge announcement. Meghann, did you want to maybe take a little dive with us and sort of give a little bit of an explainer of how this came to life and what the fund is?
I'm happy to do it. So it's fans, supporters can go to www.supporttheplayers.net, net for National Emergency Trust, but also the domain name. This was an idea that really came to pass out of the No More Side Hustles campaign that we launched. You know, as we really listened to players' stories, we just heard story after story of like, this thing came up and I couldn't afford that emergency. And the examples, I mean, you could spend your whole podcast imagining examples, but a few that have come to mind is like a player loses a parent during the course of the season and can't afford that plane ticket back home. A player gets traded and has to get her 2 little boys in an airplane at the last minute because she's got to ship out and get to the next club within 24 hours. Player who had to move out of her apartment and, you know, it had mold in it. She's got to come up with a security deposit to find a new one or something, you know. Just a few examples. Out-of-pocket copays for mental health treatment became really important this season. And so we'd started this process this summer of looking at launching an emergency and charitable fund, which is something that labor unions do. And when, you know, Mana, Kaya, and Sinead all came out with these stories, it became evident that there's just this kind of wider need for players to remove cost as a barrier to players seeking the help and support they need. You know, I've been connected to Mana, but she actually came to me and said, I'm passionate about this, about removing cost as a barrier to seeking mental health treatment. I really want to figure out how we could fundraise for this. All these people reached out to me about, you know, setting up a GoFundMe or doing this or that. I was like, it's funny you say that because actually we've got this other thing we're doing, and there's really this synergy between the kind of two efforts in coming together. So Mana has really been amplifying, using her voice to amplify the need to support players and removing costs as a barrier to mental health treatment. So that's really become kind of a focus. And, you know, I think the response, said you can certainly speak to it from the players' perspective, but I feel like that what I'm hearing from players is that this is an awesome thing. We're really glad to see it happening. It's good to know that the union is there for them. We'll always have their backs, and this is going to be a safety net that's there when they need it.
Yeah, Sydney, as a former player and really having your finger on the pulse of what the players are thinking and feeling when this fund was announced, and now that it's active and out there, and fans of the league can support the players directly, does it provide a sense of comfort or stability for players in the league that aren't making enough just based on their contracts with teams?
Absolutely. I mean, I look at, you know, the impact that the Players Association continues to be able to have. And I think this is just another element to that. And to see the evolution of the PA and, you know, the resources that are starting to come available, and then to be able to provide just that comfort to know that, hey, a bad situation might happen, but I've got people in my corner. And I think that you know, that can translate into so many different things to allow players to just feel good, feel confident, and be able to go out and do their jobs to the best of their ability and eliminate some of that worry.
You know, I want to maybe back off of that a little bit. You know, something that we've been seeing in this off season, adjacent to all of these forms of support that are coming out for the players, and now that includes this emergency fund trust. Something that we've been seeing in the offseason with the introduction of San Diego Wave and Angel City, we saw a very active trade window, right? But one of the narratives and storylines that have been coming out of that, in particular with the player acquisitions, is that the conversations that have been taking place ahead of something like an expansion draft, where we saw a lot of teams trading out, right, of an event like that, and sort of hearing, you know, behind the scenes that an event like that in the past has brought a lot of maybe anxiety at times for certain players because of the unknowns that lie ahead, right? With that recent event that just took place, is it, I don't know, perhaps refreshing to sort of know or hear or see that there are a couple of clubs that are introducing themselves to the league in a way in which they are trying to engage more with players, having transparency, having conversations prior to sort of making those moves ahead of an event like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's encouraging to see. I think you're seeing a little bit of a philosophical shift that we're living through in this moment. You know, I think it's a positive thing, and it's encouraging that clubs are wanting to hear what players' preferences are. But we're also amidst a CBA negotiation, and I can assure you that what players want is not permission but power. You know, we want to be able to dictate terms and conditions of employment and decide where we play, and not have to ask for a club's permission to do that. So those are things that we are fighting for right now.
You know, let's sort of stay with that energy, Meghann. I imagine that there's been a lot of, you know, meetings and conversations, a ton of back and forth, and everything in place, and fans and how they can, you know, with this fund and how they can perhaps donate directly to players and support the PA, because that's something that has always kind of come into play, right? Especially with everything that has gone on in 2021. That's sort of something that has always been the question that has always sort of been hanging towards the end of everything that we've been doing on Attacking Third when it comes to highlighting the Players Association and everything that's been going on. There's always that very simple question where it's like, how can I help? What can I do to show support for the players? And you've already mentioned that heading over directly to the .net is the best, most direct way to actually do that. But in terms of how the actual fund works and how players can utilize that, do they apply for the funds? Is there a board of trustee that comes into play that oversees the type of case-by-case scenarios? How does that work once the player comes forward with their emergency?
You know, I'm a lawyer and a nerd, so I love a process question, like a really good process question. So the supporttheplayers.net is a 501c3 status pending with the IRS. So once that status is approved, it's a charitable contribution that's tax deductible. And it is independently administered by 4 trustees. The PA has appointed these 4 trustees to manage the funds. So I don't make the decisions. These trustees do. And those 4 trustees, I think it's significant who they are. Tracy DeForge, who's the founder of the Players Impact, so has a lot of experience in launching startups for professional athletes. Donna Cohen, who's an attorney. So you need a lawyer who's going to, you know, make sure you got the fiduciary liability insurance and following the trust documents and keeping things in order. And she's got a really impressive set of credentials in advocating for women in sports. Stacey Enos, who played in the first ever U.S. women's national team game in 1985 in the Copa Mundialito, and won the first 3 championships for University of North Carolina. So we're kind of bridging the generations there with Stacey. And then Kelsey Davis, who's a former WPS player, goalkeeper, and now chaplain who ministers to athletes in crisis. And so we really feel like those skill sets were what we're looking for to be able to meet the needs of players who might be in crisis. And so we're actively fundraising now. We need every dollar we can get. Supporttheplayers.net is where you can go to contribute. And then starting January 15th, players will be able to submit applications. Those applications will be administered through we have a kind of private system for players, you know, on our website, a portal that they can access. And so the trustees will review those applications and turn them around quickly to get funds out, because it is by definition an emergency. One thing that's really critical to know, and former players are listening to this, a little known thing the PA did this year that we're really excited to launch, and Sid will, of course, as our business agent, be able to really beef this out and run with it. We've added former players to our membership categories. And so any player who signed a contract to play professional soccer in the United States at any time, so WSA, WPS, or NWSL, is eligible to join the Players Association. And when they become a member of the PA, they're also eligible. One of the many benefits they'll be able to access is the ability to apply for emergency financial assistance.
So, Sydney, as Meghann just said, this is now available for former players that come into it. What does that really mean? And what does that look like as a former player? Like, how are you guys spreading the word for these players, besides, of course, listening to Attacking Third? But what does that mean from your role as the business agent with the PA?
Yeah, you know, again, as someone who's really excited about being able to find my new niche in the soccer world, you know, I'm hopeful that we can go back and we can get the people that helped build these leagues and built soccer to where it is today. You know, we can honor them in that sense and let them know that you've got a community, you've got a group that's here to support you. You know, if it wasn't for you and the work that you've done and the lives that you've lived, we wouldn't even be in this position to do it. So I'm actually really excited about that element of this fund, because there's so many deserving players that if they need an extra hand here, we want them to know that we've got their back, because clearly they've had ours for, living and pioneering for us to be able to get to where we're at.
It's this super secret club that once you're in forever. It sounds fantastic. I mean, that's really what it should be as the Players Association.